Welcome to the Recovery 2.0 conference. I'm your host, Tommy Rosen, and today I am so excited to be speaking with Akah Jackson. Akah is a KRI certified Kundalini yoga teacher and a medical Qigong practitioner who is presently pursuing his master's degree in counseling psychology. His extraordinary story, his family history, includes slavery, plant and spirit medicine, and of course, the crossing over into freedom. Akah has taught at Passages Drug and Alcohol Addiction Care Center for the past 7 years, where he has helped thousands of clients to move beyond addiction and find their own path to freedom. Akah, thank you so much for sharing your strength, your hope, your wisdom with the Recovery 2.0 community today. Welcome.
Give thanks for this opportunity.
So grateful.
Do it together.
We'll do it together.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Akah, I want people to better understand modalities of treatment of addiction. And as I have gotten to know you and count you as a real brother of mine, I've been able to watch your process as a counselor. And I consider the work that you do to be of critical importance. And that's part of why I'm so anxious for people to hear about what you do. I thought we could start with a little bit of background on you, just a bit about where you're coming from in your own development, movement through addiction into recovery, becoming a counselor teacher. I know that we could speak for 10 hours about that topic alone,
Right.
but just some of the salient points that you recall that brought you down this beautiful path of service.
That's beautiful about being in the rooms for now 45 minutes to help a person grow in transformation into their spiritual awareness of who they truly are. That I get a chance to tell my story in about 1 or 2 minutes. So I do want to share that because the first question I ask someone in those sessions is, do you agree that you have the ability to say yes or no? Just to kind of let that sink in a moment. That we distill a session that I have, we distill ourselves into this very original place before we had a name, before we had stories. Who are we? What abilities do we have? Now, what led me to that was going through my own traumas. My mother and father fought while I was in the womb. My father got physical with my mother around the last trimester. And around 3 years old, my father attempted to kill my mother. So with her knowing the ways of dealing with the mind of a person, because she worked in X-ray and she had the training on how to bring somebody down when they're losing it, she got him to take her to the family doctor, stitched her up, and then I never saw him again after that. You know, the whole restraining order and all those kind of things. So the household didn't get any quieter emotionally. And the reverberation of the trauma continued throughout the house till I was about 12 years old when I started to get out more and thinking that if I was accepted by others, I would be all right. The noise inside would quiet itself. That was my whole goal. I wanted the noise inside to be quiet. Got introduced to the 3 therapists at 12 years old in Jersey City, New Jersey. Marijuana, cheap wine, and cocaine.
Wait, the 3 therapists?
The 3 therapists. I call them that.
Marijuana, cheap wine, cocaine.
There you go.
Okay, I'm getting a picture.
Get that picture. You know, and even as I ask people, it's this social interaction with the ability to make this change. Because I felt like Superman. I mean, I'm about 5'5", I can grab the rim, almost dunk. I was like, wow, check this out. The feeling in my body was incredible. I didn't have that emotional pressure and noise going on anymore. And as things progressed, I couldn't do the cocaine. I really never got high on it anymore after that. Alcohol was a way to belong. I thought if I belonged, it would quiet down the noise. But, you know, doing a little too much, getting a little sick. The next morning, it's not quieter inside. So in a sense, the story that I had was saving me along the way. And this is what I want people to understand, the support systems that are there for us in subtle ways when we begin to wake up and see, hey, this way I was acting is not something to look at myself about and not want it be part of my life and push it away. If it's a memory, how did it support me? And in this case, the cocaine and alcohol went out the window quick, because after my first year in college at 16, having the spinning bed after the drinking games, I was like, oh man, I can't handle this. Because I was focused on my trauma in such a way where it was guiding me to the peace I was looking for.
Ultimately.
My life. I didn't realize that while I was going through it, of course. But as we start to mature in the recovery process, we can start to create the story in a way in which it can support us, or we can create the story in a way in which it just continues us down the path of walking the familiar way, as I was, of looking to get rid of something that was making life inside uncomfortable. So as I tell my story, I often stop at a point. Around this time in my life, we moved to New York at 16. I got accepted to a pre-med program. And 2 years into that, my mother had to go to Alabama, where we're from. So this is the slavery aspect of my story. My great-great Aunt Rose, Grandma Rose and Aunt Mamie. Grandma Rose came from slavery. And Mamie is the one that passed on the medicine way to me that she learned from her father. So I come from a lineage of medicine people. But now, forward into my life at 18, my mother needs to return to that land and deal with her land inheritance. And there's so much energy going on that, you know, the stories that we have of our lives and the healing that needs to take place just came to a big head for her. And she had to get lawyers and things. And it was an ugly situation around the land. So I don't have any support in New York, emotionally or financially. So I got to figure it out. My mother's like, okay, young man, you're on track for a great career. You got a 2-bedroom apartment with parquet floors. Go ahead and live your life. Be a man, right? Hey, now I get to face the emotions on my own, right? I get a chance to deal with all these things that I really wasn't prepared for. And the only support system I knew about at the time was marijuana and basketball. I would smoke a joint and I would run through the Fort Tryon Park, uptown 196 and Broadway, and I would attempt to work it out. If I could hit a jump shot, if I could make a pass, play among the trees, the big boys, man, I'm doing something for myself, because thinking about being a doctor was long term. And it was overwhelming to think long term because the emotions were in my face. Right? Saying that you're not good enough, feeling the fears of my mother from the womb, not knowing how to deal with the noise inside. So I dived into codependent relationships. I can invite the pretty young ladies from Montclair, who've never been to New York or Jersey and have a big experience in the big city of dreams. Do that, have these kind of conversations, which I always loved, which always quieted down my heart. And I can do those things. But I was using those qualities that I had. Check this distinction. I was using the beneficial qualities I had that were gifts to hide from the emotions within.
Yes.
The emotions that were disturbing, the emotions that were depressive, the emotions that caused me to think about suicide as a way to get away from the noise. This escapism, I wanted to escape from it. So I was using things to escape. So this is where codependent relationships becomes another addictive behavior.
Another avenue.
Yeah, another avenue.
We all do this on the train of addiction, active addiction. I think we all do this. We're all, there's a bed of pain, a bed of trauma, a bed of suffering, and by whatever means we've chosen, we are avoiding that bed. Would you say that's true for a while until we begin to wake up?
Here's the question I ask. that's directly connected to that. As we travel in our session from acknowledging that we have the ability to say yes or no, then there is the question, do you think you use your authority of that yes or no to promote your health and well-being? And I look at well-being as every relationship we have, we work on cultivating that relationship until it represents this fulfillment, until it represents the connection to being involved in expressing our true selves, where we feel fulfilled. We feel this complete sense of our mind, body, and spirit being in harmony with this present moment, right? Well-being.
The answer for me, of course, in active addiction would be no. No, I'm not sure I have. Well, actually, what I would have said is, oh yeah, I have the ability to say yes or no.
Yeah.
But I'm not using my authority by any means. So that's if I was able to be honest with myself at that level at that time.
Right. And usually coming to that conversation with someone that is intentionally there holding a container for your health and well-being.
Yes.
There is a moment of really admitting it. And then there is a hesitation in the room when I ask, do you think you're using your authority of that yes or no? Many times there's an immediate no. There's an immediate no. And after that, we look at, okay, what is holding us back from using that authority? So this is my research question around, how can we recover the relationship with our true self? Because for me, going through the traumas, I had the stories really that originated from the actions of my mother and father.
Yes.
So they were entangled in the stories I'm attempting to tell about myself. As we learn from 2 years old, when the eyes stop scrying, like looking parallel, and we begin to focus on a point. It's like I'm focused on this camera. So we start to have perspective of out there and in here. Happens somewhere between 18 to 24 months. And we start to say no, right? So we don't have full control of our yes and no. But we try on our identity by saying more no. Dig that. I just got that in this moment. We say no, so what do they call it? The terrible twos. But two is that duality. Here's inside, there's outside. So when I ask that question about did you use your authority? It's to begin going inward and determining how have I been using this faculty given to me to guide my vessel. That's what I'm looking to I only have 45 minutes times 4. Really, it's times 3 because the first session, a person is under the Suboxone taper or the Klonopin taper or the Clonidine taper, or some kind of taper where they're not fully present.
Yes.
So I don't have much time under this particular model of therapy.
Yes.
But the idea is to plant enough seeds so that a person can begin to see inside themselves, like I had to do. So my whole journey in life has been, how can I have peace in this heart? Because the type of trauma I had, if we look at neuroscience and they're beginning to discover that trauma in the womb affects development cognitively, which I've been diagnosed by psychiatrists as having slow tempo disorder. I can go into those stories. Stories. I can entangle my own story with my identity, with those outer stories, or I can begin to go inside, use that authority to say, okay, hold on. I want to say yes to the story that I am looking to claim for my life. The story that I am whole and complete, and that I need practices to help me hone my skills so that I can perform the way I know I can perform in this life and experience the fullness of what's been given to me to experience, called the gift of life.
Yes.
There are support systems.
I want to speak about those support systems when someone comes into your office and the incredible frustration that people feel with themselves, ultimately. there's a sense of, wow, I really have potential, or I had potential. How did I get here? I'm in treatment. How did I get here?
Mm.
And that unbelievable frustration.
Mm.
How can you help a person to deal with that, that unbelievably negative self-talk, the self-doubt, and the feeling that, maybe this is the best I'm ever going to be able to be. Like, I like to hear about these support systems and how you help a person out of negativity. Because I know that any one of us can relate to that negative self-talk. Whatever place we're at in our development seems these days to be part of the human condition, especially if you came from trauma.
Yes, yes. Wow, you're bringing it up, brother. You're bringing it up. And I add to this category those who have relapsed. Want to make sure, because I see people who return and they thought they had it, and they've been going for 8 months, a year, 2 years, and then that thing just cracks that space of safety that they had, and this familiar way emerges again. So here's the first thing. The reason why I talk about ability is to begin to hone the person in on a focus of self that was there even before they created the story about their life. Their heart was beating for them. So this is a big one for me, because one day, dribbling this basketball, smoked the herb as my morning ritual, went out for the run, and the marijuana wasn't working, right? Dribbling the basketball wasn't working. Something was awakening in me. I didn't know at the time, but something was awakening in me. And if, in terms of support, if we are unaware of what is awakening process is, what the awakening process is into realizing our true self, we can very easily slip into the story because it's familiar. It's familiar. And I always do this exercise to give a person a sense of an awakening, to where they can realize there's a support system within, as I did in that moment, to realize, wow, my heart is beating for me. Like the marijuana wasn't working, the basketball wasn't working, but I looked around at nature and I felt my heartbeat after I stopped. And I was like, wow, this is being done for me, nobody else. And here I am thinking about throwing my life away as a solution. But if I don't use this heartbeat that's given to me, that gives me the ability to be conscious and aware of what I'm feeling, I'm not going to be able to shift the feeling around the way I want to feel it. I'm not going to be able to experience what that shift is going to be like if I end my life in this moment and I don't utilize the work and action of this heart and lungs, bringing me this life force energy. So how I do it for the clients in the room, and anyone can try this at home, is just interlace your fingers naturally, without looking, just interlace your fingers. And now that you have them interlaced, look down and see which thumb is on top. Now, when you look at that, whether it's left or right, switch and go to the opposite. And all the other fingers will follow. Now, sense that sensation. Is it different or the same? What do you notice, Tom?
Feels different, feels unusual.
Right. So go back to the familiar, everyone, where you started. That feels more familiar, yes?
Yes.
So what you just did is you became aware of how you wired your body, more than likely when you were in the womb and all throughout your life, unconsciously with this particular activity. Now go back to the unfamiliar. Now, this is a wiring that is used less, even though it's the same activity, just done slightly differently. It's a different wiring. And when we say we want to recover, and we move into a recovery life, it's a different wiring.
Yes.
Right? Relax your hands, everyone. It's a different wiring. So this begins to give an awareness to the person that, hey, something is there for me to utilize. Because if I realize I've done something a certain way over the years, and then I start, let's say, my training as a healing minister, something I've never done before, but something in it is connected to who I am. I'm wired for it, but I haven't used that wiring. Just like the unfamiliar way of wiring is there, but I haven't utilized it. So there is this journey in the sessions that we have with folks, is that there's an awareness of an ability. There's an awareness of an authority. And then there's an awareness of that authority is mine. It's yours.
Yes.
Now there's an action that needs to be taken to develop that authority. And you have a support system that is there, that if you engage it, like Tommy and I are Kundalini yoga teachers. Part of being a teacher is to get up every morning and do a practice. That practice connects the wiring with our true self, right? That's here to do something in this world and discover what that is. So we sit in the place of teacher and let that wiring come online. But it is the realization that it's our ability to do that. The realization that it's our authority to sit in that seat. And then there's a realization of the actions that it takes to sit in that seat. So this is the sobering aspect of recovery, because we are built to be our true self. And how do we begin to connect to that wiring?
Is it possible that people who end up in your office, that their true self will come through the continued use of substances? Or by virtue of the fact that they've made it to your office, it means that they're at a juncture in their life where the only way to find their true self, just because they ended up in your office, that the only way for them to get to that deeper level is by putting down the substances, and now they're ready to do the work of looking squarely at themselves without trying to, as you said earlier, push anything away.
Yeah, when I ask people what keeps them out of that driver's seat of authority, if we consider a metaphor of a driver's seat in the car, a vehicle, right? That vehicle is designed to support our intentions, to go from point A to point B. So we have this vehicle we landed in. Part of it is physical, and just like a car, part of it requires a consciousness to sit in it and direct it.
Yes.
So I give them this metaphor just to make a tag to the choices that are available to us as far as recovery is concerned in relating to our true self. The way we're designed is to operate in fullness. The way we're designed is to operate from an internal awareness using the faculties of intuition and inspiration, right? Combined with intention and then action, right? There are these words, concepts that humans have come up with that have to do with knowing something that goes beyond the five senses. So when we say we want to recover, when we want to heal, we want to let go, put down the substances, that is, in my eyes, the only way. Put down the substances is the only way to begin to tune inward, because the substances are coming in and activating the senses, which is going to distract us from being in the driver's seat, just as anyone knows who drinks and drives. It disturbs your ability to control the vehicle. And therefore, man has created laws that have to do with DUIs. Right? So I often have that metaphor. There's laws that govern the universe. We are an example of a smaller version of the universe. These laws govern us inside as well as out in nature. And then there's the laws of man. So it says 55 miles an hour. If you obey that law, you invite less drama in your life. You just want to be in your own world, not connected to the laws. Then you invite more drama in your life. The more you go beyond that speed limit. So I often give these kind of metaphors to help a person really begin to bridge the gap between why they're not in the driver's seat. So this is what I get. Most of the time it's around the story, right? Has to do with mother, father, sister, brother, relationships. Has to do with negative thoughts about self, right? That there's this idea about their own identity that supports having a negative point of view about life and then supports the substance being used to be utilized. So, for example, social courage is a big one that comes up a lot. So as you grow socially into your adolescence, the need to be fully self-expressed and liked becomes emphasized in one's self-identity. So this idea of looking at oneself as if it's hard for me to talk to other people, or I have too much going on in my mind and it's hard to communicate, right? I have these fears that I won't be liked or accepted. This idea of cool. There's a lot of research around being cool.
Right.
That just causes judgments to just go out of the window with regard to health and well-being. But a person will say, to gain social courage and belong is another big pull. They will do things like cocaine, meth, alcohol, go to the parties and do pop the pills and do these kind of things so that they can feel, get a Xanax pill in and like, wow, I don't have to deal with that. I could just, now you get a chance to radiate from within, but it's an artificial umbrella from the rain of pain, right? It's artificial. To hone in on how are you supported to do that? Because if the Xanax can do it in your body, you got to remember, folks, the chemist is in there studying the plant because the plant has the plan to go into your cell and open up things that you need as part of your plan. But the chemist is looking for the hit record, right? He's not thinking about really unfolding your plan, or she, right? They're just looking for the hit formula. What can they do based off of what's been identified? Oh, people are afraid of, life and anxiety and all these things. But Xanax cannot do what your body has been supported to do. A long, deep inhale, and begin to talk to yourself. Activate your vagus nerve, part of the calming aspect of your nervous system. Get communication going between your heart and your brain, which is, go see the Heart Math Institute about heart coherence, so that you can calm down your system and secrete the neurotransmitters that help you feel calm. Right? It's the vagus nerve getting upset when you feel that pressure in your chest. That's what was happening to me. When I got introduced to Qigong, when I got introduced to Kundalini Yoga, it was teaching me about how this body is designed to be one with the universe. So I started looking beyond the story of my mother and father, beyond the stories that linked with those, entangled with theirs, that caused me to think that I'm not supported by the universe, or it's hard for me to be in relationships, hard for me to communicate, thinking poorly about myself and my cognitive abilities. Like all of these stories I've entangled in my own identity.
Yes.
Just come out of the forest.
Speak about, with regards to the story of that a lot of people hold with regards to being an addict.
Yeah. I'd say a lot of them link to family, and then they create this scenario in their own mind about who they are in the world. So that's a critical period, pre-adolescence to adolescence, where we are making that transition away from parenting in the home.
Meaning, this is in my family, so I have it, I am it. Is that what you mean?
So family, it's various ways. That's one aspect. My mother's an alcoholic. My father's an alcoholic. And that's what I saw. I took sips of his beer as I went and brought his beer to his chair. And so now I'm an alcoholic, right? Or, I was the youngest child. My 3 older siblings were drug abusers. My mother was bipolar, and my father was a drug abuser, right? So how they feel unaccepted, how they feel that they don't belong anywhere because they don't want to live that life, but the pressure of it is causing them to live that life because that's what they know as the solution to the isolation they feel just from the thought is, I don't want to be like that.
Self-perpetuating.
But I don't know what else to be. And so when now socially going out and interacting socially from that social model, how do I be among these people? I still have the feeling that I don't belong and I don't want to be like that. But then these people accept me, but they do that. They do the meth, they do the Xanax, they do the alcohol, they do the cocaine. And I wind up doing that because they accept me. My family did that, but they didn't accept me. But now the most painful thing out of all of it was not being accepted, not being acknowledged, not being recognized. So, even to the older child that has to take care of the siblings because the mother or father are checked out, again, they're avoiding their pain and discomfort to the point where they have lost their connection to their responsibility as a parent. Their story of pain is so great that they hide from the pain with alcohol. They hide from the pain with opiates.
Yes.
Which is a very big deal between the alcohol and the opiates. It's a very big deal because it's so consuming. It's so enveloping of consciousness that you can forget about the pain and discomfort.
The way also that it warps the brain and the nervous system and the endocrine system. You're up against a lot to come off of heroin and alcohol, or heroin and or alcohol.
It's so incredible how it just puts this cocoon around the whole consciousness. And there's no, it just creates this barrier between your own ability to just have a drive.
Thank you so much. I want to ask you about the what we would refer to these days as the current opiate epidemic, and all the overdose deaths and the unbelievable death that we've seen from this. From the outside, you would look at this, what's happened over the last particularly 10 to 15 years, and one might say, wow, either the strength of these drugs has gone up, the amount of these drugs has gone up, or the way that we're using it has changed, or the amounts to which we're using it, or the sheer number of people who are using, because it appears, at least if you pay attention to the media, it would appear that something's worse now about heroin, about OxyContin, about Vicodin, about Demerol, about fentanyl. Yeah. Something's worse now than it used to be. But we know that these drugs, pure drugs are just pure drugs. They were pure drugs in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and they're pure drugs today. But right now, so many people are falling. Yeah. And people all of a sudden, of course, are waking up to the idea that we're in sincere trouble. Yeah. I'd like to hear your thoughts around what has something changed? What's shifting for us? Why are so many people all of a sudden dying? Yeah. And it's not all of a sudden, but in these numbers, it is kind of all of a sudden.
Right. With our awareness of our world today, just like in a person's life, we were speaking of earlier, this moment of awakening. I had one client say, that his awakening was overwhelming.
Mm.
And I thought that was interesting, that coming out of the fog of addiction, and because this person was very aware, he was tuned in to aspects of this world we live in that some people might call sacred geometry, the forces that we may use to create with. He was aware of, like we did the test, for our awareness. Like he was really aware and curious about how this universe operated, and how this body interacted with the universe around us. And I thought he's very intelligent and a seeker of knowledge. But at the same time, he was afraid of the awakening. Like it in a sense terrified him.
Too much.
It was too much.
Mm.
But yet that's the whole goal, is to awaken and realize there's more to life than just the comfort. So here's a category of people that I think kind of slip under the radar: the people that do have physical injuries that require to have a quality of life, at least the way the modality of allopathic medicine operates, gives them opiates so they can have a greater quality of life, because of the situation, back operations,
Chronic pain of some kind.
Chronic pain. So, which he was in that category. But his awakening connects to everyone, because I think in our larger society, there's an awakening taking place.
It's painful. Too much.
And it's too much because we've been hiding for so long. Take that hiding or numbing. So that's the big thing I get. Back to the driver's seat, and what keeps us out of that driver's seat, as the driver's seat represents authority over our true self and our choices. People say that the pain of life in all of its various representations, the pain of life is too great. I want to numb from it. The emotional pain, mental pain, the physical pain. I want to numb that so that I can live my life. So I think because of twofold, the availability of a medical modality utilizing substances to deal with the social pain, whether that's in psychiatry or different branches of medicine, other branches of medicine, that there's this acknowledgement of the awakening that I sense needs to take place, so that we recognize our ability to navigate the pain and change the story of it into a story of empowerment. For example, I had a client who had issues with some kind of degenerative bone issue with his jaw. Okay. And we know the work of Bruce Lipton, where there's an energy connected to the way we think about how it is to exist in this body that then influences the expression of the body. And if any of you want to know, check The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, and it will get deeper details into what I'm about to talk about.
And I'm also interviewing him for this conference again, so he'll be on here.
Beautiful. Because it's the idea of awakening. You do need a place to stand with that awakening to know that you can navigate it. And this is the kind of knowledge I want to share in this moment around this onslaught of what it seems people dying of overdoses. I mean, just in the last year, clients I've sat with, I get the word that they're not here anymore. And it's hard to imagine sometime with the quality of person I interact with, because I don't have the restrictions of the insurance company on me as a psychotherapist or a marriage and family therapist to address certain things. I get a chance to be with the person, with their heart, and see what it is they want for their life. And when we talk about this awakening, here is this gentleman, powerful man, played hockey, strong person, but he got this pain in his jaw and started to less and less be able to open his mouth. And the system, the way they look at it, they helped him with the pain. But helping him with the pain also began to create a buffer between him and those he loved. But he also recognized it created a buffer between him and his expression that was subtly being repressed over the years of his life of being, one who could perform and wanting to do that to please a father, to please a coach, and repressing his own feelings that began to awaken that maybe I don't want to play this sport. Maybe I want to be a designer. Maybe I want to be a contractor. I like building. I want to build houses and retreat centers. But he had the pressure of his ability, great hockey player, and he wanted to please. Somehow the habit to look outside and please others before acknowledging within the intuition that's rising up, the inspiration that's rising up of who we are, and this lack of a presence that can acknowledge. When I say spirit, I just mean the non-physical part of us. Mm-hmm. Tommy and I, again, we practice Kundalini yoga, so we look at that as the infinite part of us. Mm-hmm. Some might call that consciousness. But whatever that is inside that's connected to your true story, true self, and it starts to emerge. And then what happens if you have to push that awakening down? But it's like a current of a river. Even the Hoover Dam has to allow an outlet for that current to flow. Here's the current of the truth of who we are. And it wants to flower and blossom, but yet, due to external social structures, we father. We want to please Father, right? We want to belong. So I always think about this emerging problem that we have of being afraid of the awakening that's taking place. And when it comes to touching these emotions and feelings, I often guide people to understand that you are supported. If you have this vagus nerve, what can it do for you? So when you get afraid of the awakening, when you feel overwhelmed by the awakening, like the client I was speaking of earlier who was afraid of his awakening, as we dived into different practices like alternate nose breathing, which Tommy teaches in Recovery 2.0 community videos, just diving into that, I say, okay, feel that fear of your awakening, feel that overwhelm, and let's test the support systems that are wired into us. So we go into it for just 1 minute, because I don't have a lot of time. And if I can ask them, like Dr. Joe Dispenza says, if you can just see the feedback, feel the feedback that you get from your own effort, just feel that change, then you have the ability.
It's. I just want to underline what you're saying. These support systems that you're talking about, the heartbeat, the breath, the new routine, the feeling into the body's ability to feel into a new experience. These are the things that I avoided completely in my addiction, and that ended up saving my life in recovery.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. So there is something to be said for the idea of making somebody sit still and look. And it sounds to me like one of the greatest gifts that you offer in your practice is, even if it's only 4 sessions, even if it's only 45 minutes a session, is I'm betting that those 45 minutes a session are incredibly impactful for the people that you get to work with. And I'm wondering if you spoke of some of the tragedies. And I have had them in our community at Recovery 2.0 as well. You can't work directly with people who are afflicted by this dis-ease and this disconnection without losing people.
Right.
And you also get to see the lights turn on.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to share one of your favorite success stories in the work that you do, and what keeps you going and doing it, in the face of the hard times. What keeps you going? Those positive moments where you're like, okay, I know I'm on the right track here.
Wow, you got me tearing up, man.
Mm.
Whoa. Here's I think we all have the habit of looking out at others and having these projections, these ideas of who a person is.
Mm.
Oh yeah, they'll get it. When they'll come in and like, yeah, man, I think I'm really spiritual. And, I used to get really moving. I do. Anybody that turns on, anybody that's willing to walk that path of owning their authority, to be healthy and to share their gift and appreciate the loved ones in their life, man, it's the reason for sitting down. But when I get a person who, in my own mind, even as I calm my own inner judgments, I think there's not much I can share with this person because they're not really open. But when I let that go and just connect with this human being in front of me who was a contractor from Long Island, very much again, I hesitate to categorize a person, but just to shape your idea of this hardworking character, right? Who could be considered, a blue collar worker, but very much deep in his way of being perfect, having life be perfect, working perfectly, lining up his taxes perfectly, lining up his retirement plan perfectly, lining up his savings for his children's school perfectly. Taking care of life perfectly was very deeply ingrained in him by his father, who he wanted to please more than anything else in the world. But as life would have it, there are these practices as socially interacting with contractors and builders, where you go to the bar, you have a beer, you watch the Super Bowl, you're involved in the culture of life. Then all of a sudden, beer becomes a way to, unwind from the day. And then, challenges happen in the family, in the business. The crash of 2008, you have to rebuild things and losing things. And now beer becomes a way to really sedate from the stress. Now all of a sudden you have to drink some in the morning because you don't want to have the shakes going to work. So now all of a sudden you have to drink to function. And now it's starting to be an isolating experience of, once everybody goes to sleep, you go into your room and sit in the chair and drink to unwind. And before you know it, a six-pack is done. And he had no awareness of any yoga, qigong, breathing exercise, mindfulness, meditation, none. Didn't want anything to do with it. And just that moment of becoming aware of his nervous system and his inner ability to see himself and to recognize what was feeling familiar and what felt unfamiliar. That moment turned on something inside him where he realized he could look inside without dealing with the stress and children and wife and life and business and father dying and all these things. He could look inside without that and see himself. From that moment on, he devoured. I would give him, usually it's a long, deep breath, so you get used to the mechanics of breathing, and also begin to relax stress on the vagus nerve. Vagus, please look up the vagus nerve.
Spell it for people, Akah.
Vagus, Vegas, Las Vegas. But Vegas means wandering. nerve. It's the longest nerve that comes out from your brain. I mean, it influences the face, how you see. It influences the quality of the voice. It goes into the heart, the lungs, diaphragm, into the digestive organs. And what's unique is it communicates to the brain as well as from the brain to the body. Two-way nerve, very unique. So when you begin to breathe and open up, you start communicating to the brain and help release neurotransmitters, communicating to the heart and the brain. Again, getting that heart-brain coherence. Anyway, for him, that was a game changer.
He felt it.
Chills. You know, you chills like, wow. And so to the point where he ordered extra sessions and, and so it's just really incredible to see someone who has no inclination towards any self-aware practice. And that's all Kundalini yoga, any yoga, Qigong, mindfulness meditation. It's a self-awareness practice. You can, go through the weeds of all these stories we've told ourselves and just be with the true person that you are and begin to tell the story that you would love to tell. And he went for that. He started his daughter was into it as well. So he started connecting to his daughter as well. His daughter is into yoga, into meditation, into Bruce Lipton, into these people. So he developed a connection with his daughter like he never had before.
Incredible.
And it starts to spread throughout the family like that. Then his wife, and they've gone to, Kripalu, and now they're going to have an interaction together. And it just starts to spread, this tipping point. I say to folks, it might seem very dismal taking the first steps into the darkness of your truth, but that darkness becomes your own place to create because none of the other stories are in there. Yes. And that darkness is not intended to hurt you, make you feel sad or lonely. It's a place to create from. And then you get a chance to connect to others because you connect to yourself. In those moments in the morning, when Tommy and I ask you, get up before the sun and sit still with yourself and do something to occupy your mind so it learns, like you develop the wiring so the mind can serve your higher self, like it can support that self that you want to be, that you think about, especially when you make it out of the first wave of addiction. You feel like you have something that's meaningful, and then something happens.
Yes.
It triggers you into a relapse.
Yes.
The relapse is just calling you. I call it, the first relapse is mastering yourself. You really get a chance to meet that moment now, to find that thought that took you in to the familiar, and you get a chance to pull back, get still, realize what I've done. Now you get a chance to know that thought, and that thought can either be a nemesis or it can be your teacher. So every time that kind of thought comes up, you know what path that thought's going to take you on.
Yes.
So that self-awareness starts to develop. It's developing. You're awakening. If another relapse happened, it's okay. We fell to learn how to walk. When you fall, and you hit your head, you need that because you got to learn how that reflex to put your shoulder up the next time you fall. So it's okay. I call the next relapse your pure heart degree because you get a chance to connect to your heart now. Now you got this experience that you can train yourself with help around you. Tommy, the community, me, we can help you see the way to focus on that thought because it begins with a thought. Every time somebody comes into relapse, eventually we get to the conversation. Can you remember the thought that took you down the path that was familiar? If you can catch that thought, you can make that thought a teacher. You can make that thought a guardian of that doorway down that familiar.
Yes.
And then cultivate your strength in that other wiring that you say what that wiring is. This wiring is to be strong. This wiring is to belong to myself and others. This wiring is to create connection. If you don't know how to create connection, then go learn conscious communication. Go into action.
Yes. Akah, I would say to people in your current situation at Passages Treatment Center, I hope they don't get to sit in the chair opposite you. If you do happen to need treatment and you end up there opposite Akah, you make the most of it. And for the people who are watching this, know this. Akah has a book coming up. Akah has a website coming up. Akah has a flourishing practice coming up where you won't just be able to get to him through treatment. See, Akah is not a selfish man. You probably recognize that by now. And he wants to give of his wisdom in multitudes of ways. And so I'm just here as a conduit. And I'm excited that hopefully many of you will seek him out for counseling, which I know he's open to. And
that's right.
Whenever I speak to you, Akah, I feel uplifted. And just talking to you has the quality of retuning my own nervous system to a place of greater calmness. I mean that. So thank you for all your personal work, which led you to this seat of the teacher. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with the Recovery 2.0 audience. I'm so grateful. Yeah. Any final words you'd like to say?
Well, if you want to reach me, the site that's coming up, it's akahjackson.com. AkahJackson.com. So we'll be coming out with beautiful information around this, tag teaming with Tommy, because we're going to eradicate this thing. We're going to awaken into the truth of who we are and really be the civilization that will be a model for the universe. Other beings are going to want to come here, as they do already, to want to experience the harmony that we've created on this planet. And that's really my goal, to create harmony within, so we can radiate that into our families and let go of these family stories and create stories of health and well-being. As we know, our teacher, Yogi Bhajan, would say, keep up your practice. Keep coming to these sessions. Get the conference, bring it into your family, invest in it, spread it around. Keep your focus. Keep your focus on health and well-being, and you'll be kept up.
Yes. Thanks, Akah, so much. For those who are not aware, every year, Akah, his amazing wife, Sukhdev, their amazing daughter, Sahej, my goddaughter, and Kia, my incredible wife, her goddaughter, we all go to Costa Rica together on Recovery 2.0 retreat. That's something I want you all to look into seriously if you want to do 7 days of intensive joy. If you want to experience intense joy, you come with us. Come with us. Do that together.
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful, brother.
All right. Love you so much, Akah. Thank you so much.
Hey, man. Lots of love to you all. Satnam.
Satnam.